Hey, Ryan. A few weeks back, I sent you a song from City of Light called Good and Gracious King. And I wanted to give context for why that song means so much to me. And I wanted to kind of backtrack in order to provide that context. And so, backtracking to a time in my life where I was wrestling with whether or not I was actually and truly saved on the basis of evaluating my own actions, essentially seeing things like my struggles with anger as representative of me not being saved. And at the time, I was directed toward the works of Tim Keller, including his sermons and a commentary that he wrote on the book of Galatians. And it really shaped my understanding of how I am saved and that I am saved. And so in one of his sermons, he speaks on the parable of the prodigal son and identifies it as the parable of the prodigal two sons. And I found this clever, but also when examining the context of the passage in Luke 15, you can find exactly what Keller is talking about. Luke 15 opens by having the Pharisees, the righteous lawgivers, or not lawgivers, but law leaders of the time in the Jewish community, complaining about Jesus, saying that he welcomes sinners and eats with them. And Jesus responds to that by sharing a few parables, the last of which is the parable of the prodigal son, as it's often identified. But when you read it, you see what is clearly meant as the prodigal son, the person these Pharisees would identify as sinners, and he returns to the father. The prodigal son wastes his life and yet turns away from that, returns to the father, and trusts the father with all of what the father can offer him, and that is security and grace. And the passage actually ends, the parable ends, not with the redemption of the youngest son. It ends after the redemption of the youngest son by saying in Luke 15:25, "Now his older son was in the field. As he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he summoned one of the servants, questioning what these things meant. 'Your brother's here,' he told him, 'and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and didn't want to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. But he replied to his father, 'Look, I've been slaving many years for you, and I've never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who's devoured your assets with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him.' 'Son,' he said to him, 'you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" But the parable doesn't provide a redemption arc for this oldest son. And I identified with this oldest son. I was evaluating my life based on how I was performing my own righteousness, essentially saying God owed me treasures because I was performing well for him. And the oldest son is a ridicule of the Pharisees, and I was that. Performative. I was living a life believing that my righteousness would actually be what saved me, but the reality is that I was never righteous. The reality was that I needed the Father. I needed the grace of God. And so the song, Good and Gracious King, identifies this in such a powerful way. It starts, "I approach the throne of glory, nothing in my hands I bring, but the promise of acceptance from a good and gracious King. Good because he punishes sin and evil, but gracious because he sent his Son to accept that punishment for us. And if we simply have faith in that, our lives are transformed. So I'm saved on the work of Christ."